So the reason I'm doing this video, despite there being more than a couple of good videos, reviews, findings about the Viper Ultimate out there on YouTube, is because there has been some things that haven't been mentioned with this mouse, or have just been not really the main focus, despite them, I think, deserving more focus. One of those things is that the button height compared to the FK1 is higher. That's one of the things which could make people prefer the FK1 over the Viper Ultimate. One of the other things is that the Viper Ultimate gets thicker towards the front, and that bothers me when I try to grip the mouse, and I don't think I'm alone with that. As you can see, the FK1 doesn't really get any wider towards the front, which is good in my opinion. About the rubber side grips, they feel alright, they feel grippy when your hand is dry, but what I found that as soon as a little bit of moisture escapes from your thumb, they start to get more slippery. On the other side, it doesn't really bother me that much because these fingers of mine, which I place on the right side of the mouse, don't sweat as much as my thumb does. But yeah, on the thumb area it can get a bit slippery, and in fact I can get a better grip on the FK1 I have, which has a nasty looking bottom side. I know you people are gonna point this out in the comments. It's a modded FK1, by the way, with my ultralight cable, which ended up being more flexible than the MM710's cable, so yeah. If you're curious about the ultralight cable mod, then you can check out the link in the description, which I'll put there. It's a tutorial / demonstration video about it. So I can grip the FK1 better, and that's a hard thing for me to say because I was really looking forward to the Viper Ultimate, because it was supposed to feel better in the hand, for me at least, because I've always wanted a wireless mouse which resembles the FK shape, but it is narrower than the FK1. When I've seen Rocket Jump Ninja's review on this mouse, based on the measurements, I thought that it would be a little bit narrower than the FK1 and thus fit my needs better. But unfortunately, it not only does not feel narrower than the FK1, in fact, it feels wider. Maybe I just grip my mouse more towards the front. Yeah, that's probably why it feels wider, even though at the central point it's supposed to be a bit narrower. Moving on from the shape of the side, I'm gonna mention actually how the buttons feel. This FK1, which I modded with Japanese armrents, it feels much lighter than the original Zowie clicks, Huanos. And I've also sanded the inside part of the shell, so it makes the clicks even lighter. But even then, even after all of this modding, the Viper Ultimate's clicks are still lighter. So these clicks feel a lot lighter than Zowie clicks. And they are also easier to spam. A lot easier. Zowie clicks, even my modded FK1 clicks, feel a lot stickier. They are harder to spam. For example, when you need it in CSGO for burst firing the AK, or just tapping away with the AK, for example. That's where you would need easy spammability of your buttons. And this is doing a better job at that than any of the Zowie mice I've tried. So that's great. But even though it's better than the Zowies in terms of clicks, at least for my taste, it's still not as great as the G403, which in my opinion has some of the best clicks on a mouse ever, only rivaled by the G303, which I also have, but I'm not gonna bring out because it's too much hassle. But yeah, the G303 I have only has this cable, that's the only mod I've done to it, so it's not really that interesting. By the way, this G403 is also 86 grams with a lighter battery, cut out bottom part, as you can see, and carved sides. The sides that I've carved out not only decrease the weight, but they changed the shape, and that's why I did the carving, by the way. I didn't care about the weight at the point. I've already got it down to 90 grams before the carving, and I did the carving because originally the right side of this mouse, which I'm showing to you right now, are protruding. It's a gradual slope on the right side, and I've tried to make it more flat, and I did succeed, as you can see. If you look up pictures of the G403/G703, you can tell that this one looks uglier, but also more flat, and it helps me grip the mouse better. And I've also carved out this part to make the indentation even more pronounced. These two things not only make the shape different, like more flat, but they also decrease the grip width by a couple of millimeters, which really helps me out. So I've started talking about this mouse because I wanted to compare the clicks of the Viper Ultimate to the clicks on the G403. The clicks here have low travel, are really snappy, and really easily spammable. All of these attributes I like. The only real things that I don't like about these clicks are related more to the mouse's shape. If you guessed that I didn't like how high they sat, then you were right. And that's when the Viper Ultimate comes into play again. I was not only hoping for a mouse that feels like an FK/FK2 and is narrower than the FK1, hopefully. But I was also hoping for a mouse that would have lower sitting clicks, which turned out to be not true, because the FK1's, as you can see, buttons sit lower. Let me spoil the whole thing for you. The Viper Ultimate was a disappointment for me, and I'm sending it back. But that doesn't mean that it's gonna be a disappointment for you as well. I just would have preferred a narrower mouse with lower sitting main buttons. The clicks are not the only thing that is a big improvement if you're comparing this mouse to a Zowie FK1, but the scroll wheel, it's so smooth, and it's pretty light if you're scrolling it downwards, not so much if you're doing it upwards. But it has defined steps, and even though it has defined steps, it's really smooth. I love the scroll wheel on this one, just like I love the scroll wheel on the G403, which is a similar story. You get really quiet steps downwards, although it is easier to press. It is easier to move than the Viper Ultimates. You're gonna get a lot more accidental scrolls, and that usually translate to jumps in CSGO with the G403 than you would with the Viper Ultimate. Overall, the Viper Ultimate's wheel is better, I'd say, for gaming, because accidental scrolls are less frequent. But for browsing, I would still prefer the more smooth feel of the G403. When you're browsing, as you can hear, when you're moving the scroll upwards, it's louder on this one as well. So when you're browsing, accidental scrolls don't mean a shit. So, scroll wheel is great. Side buttons. A lot of people have complained on the Mouse Review Reddit that they are hard to press. And I don't think so. I actually think that the side buttons on the Viper Ultimate are more crisp, are better. They have less travel than they do on the FK1. They are also quieter, if that matters to you. And they feel more consistent. And also accidental clicks. I've had a few happen with the FK1, and I've had none happen with the Viper Ultimate. So side buttons, I'm definitely giving the edge to the Viper Ultimate. I'm gonna mention two things about the bottom part of the mouse. The first thing's gonna be an internal one about the sensor. And the second thing is gonna be about the mouse feet. Or I haven't figured it out, maybe the whole bottom of the mouse. Then after that I'm gonna move on to some comparisons with the G Pro Wireless. So, the things I want to get out of the way are the fact that this mouse, when you set it to 500 Hz, it jumps up to 1000. it doesn't hold 500 Hz stable. When you move it around in mouse polling rate checker, for which I'm gonna put a download link in the description. So if you set this mouse to 500 Hz in the software and you move it around the window of mouse polling rate checker, you'll see that it doesn't hold 500 Hz perfectly stable. It jumps up to 1000 and even more than 1000 for a split second every 3 or 4 seconds or so, which is not good. This mouse also has it. This has the 3366 sensor, G43 Wireless. This mouse behaves the same way when you're using it wirelessly. So what I haven't mentioned is that this only happens when you're using the mice wirelessly. If you're connecting either of them with a cable to your PC, then they hold 500 Hz perfectly. But the funny thing is that this is the oldest one. This has the I'm not holding 500 Hz stable in wireless mode problem. They've ironed that problem out with the G305 and the Hero sensor. And this one, the newest of the bunch, also has the I'm not holding 500 Hz stable when I'm not connected wired problem. So that's a funny thing. Yeah. I'm not sure if they could iron that out with a firmware update or whatever, but it's there on the latest firmware at the time of recording this video. But anyway, I'm gonna put all of these aside and just compare it in a few words to the G Pro Wireless. This one has some improvements and some shortcomings. The improvements are that the buttons sit a little bit lower than on the G Pro Wireless, and it is a little bit narrower than the G Pro Wireless. However, the clicks are still better on the G Pro Wireless in my opinion. The side buttons are even more crisp and easier to spam on the G Pro Wireless in my opinion. The scroll wheel is equally good on both mice, so that's a win-win for both of them. If you care about 500 Hz operation, the G Pro Wireless operates at 500 Hz wirelessly just fine. And actually, despite that being a wider mouse, I prefer to play with that. I discovered that despite wanting a mouse that is like the FK2, I mean low hump, low button height, narrow shape, I've discovered that the G Pro Wireless, how it fills out my hand, it gives me more confidence when aiming than this one does. So yeah, there's that. The last thing before I end this video that I want to mention is that when I move this mouse around, and I would like to get your guys' opinion on this one in the comments, when I move it around, even on this QCK Heavy, which should negate most of my table's not perfect flatness, I sometimes get the mouse like standing on its middle foot. I moved on to my actual table to show you what I'm talking about. Interstellar mouse. Not just the interstellar wheel. Logitech is not keeping all the interstellar action for themselves with the G502 and G900 wheel. We have some interstellar action with Razer here as well. So, I know this is a problem with my desk. I know that my desk isn't perfectly flat. But the fact of the matter is that most people don't have perfectly flat desks, so yeah. This doesn't happen with any of my other mice. You see, if I want to try to spin this one, it doesn't happen. And this is true with all of my mouse, Zowies, Logitechs, whatevers. This spinning only happens with the Razer. I don't know why is this. Maybe the middle part of the mouse is protruding more than the sides of it. Take this all with a grain of salt. I just wanted to show you this interesting bit of like information or whatever meme. If you don't have a perfectly flat table, even a QCK Heavy won't be able to save you from this phenomenon. The last thing I wanted to mention, if you paid attention, are some thoughts between the Wheel Mouse Optical and the Viper Ultimate. I wanted to say that the Wheel Mouse Optical also doesn't get wider towards the front, which is a good thing. It actually fills out your hand way more than the Viper Ultimate does. And it also, for some reason, feels shorter. So yeah, you can check out the link in the description if you're curious about the ultralight cable If you're curious about the wheel mouse optical and how I did this thingy, you can subscribe. If you're curious about my G403, my 86 gram G403 in more detail, you can also subscribe because I'm gonna do another video on it. You can also check the description because I have a Discord server which you can join and shoot me a DM there. Well, okay, I'm starting to get obnoxious. Goodbye.